Michael Sutherland, also known as Mikey Freedom, is a Wiltshire-based artist originally from Tain in the north of Scotland. He has just completed his first successful solo exhibition entitled High Tones, Low Lines, with many sold stickers appearing next to his paintings. Mike uses oils and acrylics in his work, and his first solo show represents a milestone for Mike. Having lost touch with painting for many years, he rediscovered his love in 2017, but it wasn't until 2019 when he gave up drinking alcohol that painting came to the fore in his life. His work follows themes of discovery, reconnection, and authenticity. Mike regularly shows his painting process through videos uploaded to TikTok. He is a painter of people and landscapes, often embracing punchy colours and fragmented forms. Mike has a very successful TikTok series that has been viewed by millions all over the world, where he paints his followers' portraits and has gained 80,000 followers on TikTok with a mixture of his humble and down-to-earth demeanour and great sense of humour. With his tongue firmly in his cheek, Mike describes himself as a legendary father, hot husband, ageing basketballer, kitchen dancer, ex-computer game tester, confirmed curmudgeon, painter of pictures, pool ace, gym dodger, Scottish rugby fanatic, full-time sober person, and now a full-time artist. Welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Thank you very much. Wow, that guy sounds amazing. I really like the sound of that guy. It's a lot to sit and listen to, but thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome. I do like to force my guests to listen to the introduction. I could record it separately, but it seems only fitting that you have to be uncomfortable while I read this big bio of all of the things you've done.
Just have to sit there and squirm and just listen to it. It's excruciating, but thank you. Thanks for going through.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, like I said, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Yeah, as I said, you happen to show up on my For You page, and I hit follow instantly, especially because you're just up the road. Caution, not far from where I am in Calne, which is, I guess, further south. I don't even know. No, I don't know. You're fairly local.
Maybe. Yeah, it's in Wiltshire. We're both in Wiltshire. That's fine.
Exactly. And so obviously there's a lot in there in that bio about your story, what you're doing, what you've done, all sorts of information. So, but let's start with the first question of passion. So this is sometimes quite a hard question because we can be passionate about lots of things, but if you were to kind of put it into words, what you're passionate about, what kind of gets you very excited, what makes your soul come alive, what would that be?
Well, thanks for easing me in nice and gently. That's really great. I think for me, what I'm passionate about is, I think I'm a visual person, first and foremost. So the way I learn is very visual. If I'm told something or if I read something, I'm not likely to remember it. It's not going to stick in the same way as if I see it. So I think I always knew I was visual. But when I see a painting, a piece of art, there's something magical that happens. It makes me feel something. And it's like this weird alchemy. It's more than the sum of its parts. It's much like, I guess, how a lot of people, myself included, feel about music. And my whole painting journey, horrible word, over the last while has been about the pursuit of trying to capture that, trying to bottle it, looking at an artist and going, okay, what they've produced there does something to me, does something for me. Can I do the same? Can I make people feel what I'm feeling? So I'm not saying that I copy other people's stuff, but it's more a case of what I see. Can I replicate that for somebody else in my own work? And for me, it's what I'm passionate about is that visual magic. There's something there, and it's a pursuit of that. You know, a lot of people try and define what is art, and it's a really tough one to define. But I think, I was thinking about it the other day, and I think it's actually the pursuit of painting. So it's not just producing something, it's about producing something and then wanting to do it again and again, and having your antenna out and taking in all of this input and it going into your head and outputting something new, something different. So I think that's what I'm passionate about. And I see other people's works of art, and I have tried to emulate what they've done, and it's a good jumping off point. But it never comes out the same. It always comes out through your own filter because it's your own experiences. All of your own inputs have gone in there and it's changed it. Like I remember listening to Paul McCartney talk about him writing songs in the Beatles, and they'd go, "Oh yeah, that was me trying to do, Chuck Berry. That was me and John trying to do a Chuck Berry." And it's, you can't really hear it in the song, but that's a great jumping off point. So when I realized that I had this whole world out there in front of me, this visual world that I could explore with endless possibilities, man, I went in deep, and that's what I'm passionate about. So that's a very long answer to that question, but that's what I'm passionate about is that visual magic and how to try and capture that, which is almost impossible, I think, but it's the pursuit of it.
Yes. Oh, I freaking love that answer. I wrote down visual magic, and I wrote down the word conduit because as you were talking, it kind of, I'm such a visual person as well. So I often sort of get images and pictures in my mind when people are talking. So I really had that sense of artists, storytellers, whether it's musician, paintings, authors, are a conduit for the things that happen in the world and the information that you receive, that they receive, that goes through their filter and then goes out into the world and tells another story or a different story. And I get so excited by storytelling in general, and that you're so right that it's totally okay if that comes from looking at someone else's work or hearing someone else's music, and then we interpret that, and it's all part of the alchemy of the visual magic.
I think so, and I think how many stories are there? There's a lot, but there's also very few actually. We all have a very shared experience when you boil it right down in many ways, but it's about how you express that. And borrowing from other people, I think everybody does that. It's like standing on the shoulders of giants. There's nothing ever wholly original in the world. You can only do something from your own perspective, and that is in itself kind of original, because I'm the best person at being me. Ames is the best person at being Ames, right? And that's from our perspective, so it is original in that sense, but it's a shared experience as well. True.
And I think that's what appeals to me about quite existential thinking, in the sense that we all have this same experience of death, like we're all going to die. This is getting deep. We all live with this, or try and live with a sense of meaninglessness. We're trying to find meaning in things. We all are essentially alone, in that no one else can really know what it's like to be in our heads and have our experiences. And we all have freedom, and with that comes responsibility. So I think there's something really interesting about those shared stories and shared existential topics.
Yeah, and then how does that, if you produce a piece of work, a creative piece of work, how does that resonate with other people? Do we have then a connection with that person? I think we do, because there's something there in our shared experience that is similar and is interfacing in some sort of way, perhaps. But we are all very similar, but we're also so different at the same time, which is a strange one. Gosh, we have gone deep very quickly, haven't we? It's good, isn't it?
Well, that was, I love a deep and meaningful conversation, and that was the purpose of starting this podcast, was to have lots of deep and meaningful conversations with people. So thank you for that. But that's really interesting. So I think, you were sort of talking about, I hope, to replicate, or I look at art and feel something. I would like people to look at my art and feel something, and maybe that is that shared experience of something in your art is telling of your experience, and someone else goes, yeah, I get that, I feel that.
Yes, it is. I didn't realize I had an art style. but it takes other people to kind of point that out. And it wasn't until maybe I saw all of my work, or all of the work from that current period of time, up in one room together, and I thought, God, it is really, there is a theme here. There's a through line. There's a lot of commonality between the work as well. And the biggest compliment somebody gave me was when I started doing landscapes after doing almost exclusively portraits for many years. They said, it's completely different, but we can tell it's you. Your fingerprint's still on it. And that's, that was a massive compliment. But it's this subconscious thing. So there's all of these influences going in, and then it just comes out. It's like, I think Johnny Cash was interviewed and said, like, how do you play that way you play, like a slow train coming down the tracks? And he's like, it's the only way I know how to do it. Stuff just comes in and then it comes out, and that's the filter of who I am. So
which just kind of makes me want to go back to the beginning. So can you take me back in time and then tell me a little bit about how you discovered you could do art? Or we'll start with that question.
It's I did it a lot as a child, and if left alone, that's kind of what I would revert to, and that's when I'd find a lot of happiness and calm. And I did it in school. I did it at standard grade, which in Scotland is the equivalent of GCSE. I won the prize, I'll have you know, for standard grade art in Pain in the Highlands, my big claim to fame. And then somebody said to me that computers were the future. And then all the adults around kind of nodded and, oh yes, that's very true. And with my sensible hat on, I thought, okay, that's what I'll do. I'll do that. Yeah. So I all my elected courses for hires, which is the equivalent of A level in Scotland, were around science, computer science, maths, English, physics, etc. And I dropped art. I still wanted to do it, so I could do it in my 6th year, but I would have to compress the course. It was supposed to be a 2-year course. I'd have to compress it down to 1 year. And the art teacher said, you can do this, but you'll have to work really hard. And you will also have to submit one piece of work every week through your 5th year while you're doing all those sciencey subjects, just to show us that you're motivated, which I did. And then I did the final year. And then I went off to university to study computer science in Edinburgh, and kind of just fizzled out. Art just took a back seat. I discovered drinking. I had lots of new friends. And I remember the first lecture of computer science, and they asked us, what does computer science mean to you? And the people around me were giving these very honest, authentic, kind of almost profound answers to the question. And I was there sitting there thinking, bloody hell, that's not me. I don't think that way. And I think I kind of knew then that this was not what I should be doing. But I stuck with it for the next 4 years and then tried to even pursue it as a career. And I wasn't listening to that voice, very small and very tiny. Wasn't listening to that voice. And pursuing art or pursuing anything creative. I've just, I think it was 2017. Pretty miserable, really. Drinking grew bigger as my dissatisfaction grew. The weekends started to get longer. It started to include Thursdays and Wednesdays. And drinking really kind of became a big thing. And I started to hide my drinking as well, which is a big warning sign. And it was around this sort of time that my daughter, she was 6, she got a watercolor set from her auntie, my sister, Leanne. And she asked me to sort of show her how to do it. And I said, yeah. And I knew I could, in the back of my head, I could do this. It'd be fun. And we sat there and did it together. And after about an hour, she wandered off, and I probably sat there for another hour again, and I got lost in it. And that was the little seed sort of sprouting out again. And I just followed that. then I gave up drinking kind of soon after that, and art kind of just filled that space. So I think with any kind of potential addiction, it's good to give up, not for the negative reasons or because you're being forced to, but for positive reasons. And I felt like if I could have something really positive in my life that took over, then that would work a whole lot better. And it did. So art kind of like filled my time then. So Fridays and Saturdays, nights when I would normally be drinking, I was painting, and I was just going in deep on this and loving it, loving the results and loving the process of it. I mean, a lot of the stuff, I look back on it now and, it's quite basic, but that's the way it is with anything when you're still starting out. But it's so important at the time, and it's a little step in that process. So it's not to be undermined. It's important, and it's important by in itself. So that's how it kind of grew for me, and then there was various milestones along the way. I started to gain a bit of traction in terms of just like the response I was getting from people, and being relatively egotistical. It's that kind of feeds it a little bit, doesn't it? Helps with the motivation. And I carried on painting a lot, and then on social media, it started to grow and grow and grow, and all of a sudden I'm here, and it's this bizarre situation that I'm in now.
And I've come in at the 80,000 follower point, so there's obviously a big chunk of the story before that, and now suddenly you're thrown into this, like, I'm a full-time artist.
Yes, yeah. I don't believe in the universe speaking to me, but maybe I do now, actually. And these things, like, that is an amazing alignment. And okay, I've got to grab this. I'm getting goosebumps right now. I've got to grab this because it's a really good opportunity.
Yeah.
And I don't care if I fall flat on my face, but I'm going to give it a really good shot. And I'm getting emotional just talking about it. I'm so excited about it. And it's like this, I've just been presented with this opportunity. And I've got a duty to take that, not just for myself, but for my family as well.
Yeah.
I need to be an example to my kids in a positive way. And that starts by being true to myself and authentic to myself.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it can take a while and take a few things in order for us to listen to the little voice inside that says maybe I should be doing this, or it's a familiar story, sadly. I hope not so much these days, but maybe where you get to a point in the education system, and you're kind of discouraged from arts. You're discouraged from it's hard to make a living as an artist. It's hard to make a living as a singer or a musician, but though, and do you know what? I remember that horrific advertising campaign that the government did during COVID, where they had like the image of a ballerina, and maybe now she's a computer software engineer or something. It was just horrific, depressing, but I guess representative of this idea that actually the arts are not good enough.
Yeah. Where does this come from? Because everybody enjoys music and art, don't they? They enjoy reading books. Who do they think produces these things? And it's a really damaging narrative. Oh, you can't make a living from it. You can't do this. You can't do that. But there's people out there doing it. So somebody, and you're doing this podcast. That's an awesome thing. You're putting yourself out there. You're going on this journey, and you're being yourself, right? You have to listen to those little voices, because there's a reason they're talking to you, and I think you need to be. It sometimes takes a while. I mean, I'm very jealous of those people who know exactly who they are from a young age, because that's, you know. But then at the same time, I wouldn't be who I am without doing what I've done, and that includes all the crap jobs.
Yeah.
You know, I take it less for granted, perhaps, because of that. You know.
Yeah. Would you say that your purpose is different to passion? What, you know, I don't know if we tend to think about things in terms of purpose. Like, this is the purpose of my life. I guess it's similar to meaning, like this is the meaning of life. But if you were to answer the question, this is my no, that's not a question. If you were to answer the question, what is my purpose? Do you know? Do you have an answer for that?
Ooh, I think maybe it's I think maybe it is my children, actually. You know, it's got to be showing them what's possible, and being an example, being a positive example of what they could do. My fear is that they go into something that they feel they have to go into, or they should go into, and they're not listening to their own voice inside them. You know, it's, I think, like I said earlier, you know, when you're a child and you're left unattended, it's very instructive to see what kids do. Let's take screens and computer games out of the equation for 1 second. But, you know, if they're not doing that, then what is it that they are doing? And that is really instructive about because they've got no obligation to anybody else, how they spend their time. They're going to do what they're really passionate about or interested in. So I think my purpose is to be that authentic person myself. And I hope that they will see that I'm doing something that I'm passionate about, and they take that lesson into their own lives as well. And I think, as a family, you know, I think we're starting to do that. My wife has recently started her own business where she's a hypnotherapist, a solution-led hypnotherapist, and she, you know, this is something that she's really passionate about, and she's out there doing it. She's got her business, so that's a really strong role model for our children as well. So I think my purpose is around that, and I think it starts with me. I think I have to be authentic to myself, and then only then can I be somebody who helps others in a way. And I think hopefully eventually maybe that benevolence will widen its radius out a little bit, and it won't just be my kids, but maybe it'll be spread out to the community. Because over the last 8 years, what I've discovered is that although I kind of, inverted commas, don't like recruitment, hate recruitment, I do enjoy helping my team, and I get a lot of satisfaction from that. So I've learned to listen to that and go, okay, well, actually, you didn't really classify yourself as somebody who enjoys helping others, you know, in a passionate way, but maybe you actually are, because you get a lot of satisfaction from that. So perhaps, you know, in time, my purpose may sort of grow further out from just me and my kids. But I think for now, then, you know, it's those two.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really. I guess the more I ask that question, the more I find a universal answer that is something around authenticity. Like it's your purpose is to be. There's a Carl Rogers quote. I don't know if you know who Carl Rogers is, but your wife might know who Carl Rogers is. Being in the therapy world, the purpose of life is to be that which one truly is, and I think it's quite a big statement in many ways, because how do we be that which we truly are? But by following your passion and listening to that inner voice, and then being as authentic as possible, stuff happens, magic happens.
Yes, yeah. I think you put yourself, you leave yourself open to things, and you're not always going to get those opportunities, but when they do come along, you're much more able to grab them. And I think things do happen, and you can put it down to the stars aligning and the universe and etc. etc. I don't necessarily buy into that, but I do think that if you put yourself out there, good things will happen, and that comes from, like you say, being authentic and following your voice, your inner voice.
Yeah.
I think Bob Dylan said, a man is, successful. Well, it was 1967, so he said a man, but let's put that to one side. So somebody is successful if they wake up in the morning, go to bed at night, and in between do exactly what they want. I don't know how possible that is, or likely, but I think, hopefully you can get fairly close. I think as I grow older, my definition of success has changed a lot. It's definitely started out as much more materialistic, but that's not. I'm so far away from that now. It's unreal.
Yeah. I think there's just so many seasons of life and changes that happen. It's when you were sort of talking about you kind of being a little bit jealous of people that are younger that kind of know who they are and what they want. I view that with a little bit of suspicion, in the sense that, but they've got so much more living to do yet. They're going to be completely different people by the time they get to our age. I don't know how old you are, but I would imagine we're similar ages. So you've mentioned Bob Dylan, you've mentioned Johnny Cash, you've mentioned Paul McCartney. So is music quite a big, important part of your life?
Yeah, it is. I don't play or anything like that. I love it, and I listen to music when I paint, and I have to be careful about the music I listen to when I paint, because it really kind of, if I'm listening to something really upbeat and the paint will be flying around and chucking it all over the canvas, it's a huge part of my life. And I think kind of the person I aspire to, or gives me a lot of inspiration, is like Bob Dylan, and how he rips up the rule book on his creativity every few years and almost like reinvents himself. People, I think even within creativity, others have this view of what perhaps it should be and how it should be, and they don't like people who step outside of their perceived view of that person. What are you doing? You're a painter. You can't do that. But like Dylan, he's somebody who's just does what he wants to do, and completely, like, you look from one album to the next, and they're completely different, and he completely changes. And I really admire him about that, and how brave he is, and how he seems to me to be somebody who's constantly got his antenna up and feeding that kind of big funnel in his head for inspiration, to see what comes out the other side. Yeah.
Do you feel like there's a shadow side to that in terms of mental health? Because I know that, having a creative brain and having a funnel that is very often absorbing a lot of the crap that goes on in the world, as well as the good stuff, and there's all sorts of stuff that goes in. What do you do to sort of take care of your mental health, and how do you sort of view kind of mental health in the arts, I suppose?
Yes, big question. What do I do to look after my mental health? I think I've struggled with my mental health certainly over the years. Exercise is fundamental to me, and diet, and of course not drinking. So I've been sober for almost 5 years, and that's had a massive effect on it, because what it does is it removes a filter on how I view things. So whereas in the past I'd maybe say, okay, well, I'm sad. Why is that? Oh, I'm hungover or tired.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm sad, it's because something more truthful or actually fundamental, and it allows me clarity around that, to be able to sort of identify how I'm feeling properly, rather than having it clouded by alcohol or something, whatever it is. So yeah, in terms of mental health, I really need to keep a balance without, with exercise, by not drinking, but in terms of being creative and absorbing things around me, it can be exhausting because I've got lots of ideas, and one of my things that I really need to get better at is prioritizing and focusing in on one thing rather than trying to do 10 things at once. So I know that I can be triggered and be irritable and potentially spiral into a slightly more depressive episode when I'm trying to do too many things at once and I'm not doing any of them very well. And I feel like I'm missing out on opportunities and I'm spreading myself too thin. And that's something that I've learned through therapy, but also just age and experience as well. So yeah, but at the same time, being a creative has lots of upsides to good mental health. It's very mindful painting. I can lose hours at a time painting pictures, and it's very similar to sport. When you're playing sport or if you're painting a picture, you're not thinking about the past, you're not thinking about what you need to do tomorrow or in the future. You are in that moment, and that's a wonderful place to be. What do you do to be in the moment?
That's a really good question, and one that I think I'm still asking myself, especially in noticing when I'm getting close to burnout, and I know when I'm getting close to overwhelm. So I think a little bit about what you were saying there about there's lots of things going on, I'm not doing any of them particularly well. I notice when I'm starting to the main sort of signal for me is I start getting really grumpy with people, and sort of like not very patient, and so that's when I know I need to sort of rest. I quite like doing puzzles and diamond painting, which is just like I don't know if you've come across it, but it's literally not painting at all. It's I've got one right here, let me show you. It's like little bits of plastic that you stick on a painting that's like paint by numbers. So it's like, so there's a picture of a peacock, and then this is the bits that I've done down here. So I'll have some music on or a podcast or something like that, and I'll just stick these little things on because it's kind of, doesn't really mean an awful lot. My brain is doing something and listening to something at the same time. But I think it's great that you've asked the question, because I hope that people listening to this learn that it's okay to kind of still be learning and figuring out what we need to do to take care of our mental health and be present and in the moment.
It is, and I love that you're doing, putting these little diamonds on that canvas and making a peacock and listening to podcasts. To me, that sounds like heaven. That is just giving your brain a nice rest.
Yes,
and it's refreshing. It's like a little spa for your grey matter. And we need to be better. Well, I need to be better at carving out time like that for myself. And if I don't do it, then I get really grumpy. I'm like you. I get really irritable with people as well.
Yeah. And therapy is also quite important. I dip in and out of therapy. As I am obviously also a therapist, but there is something that I just need to verbalize stuff a lot of the time that's making me angry, whether it's politically or globally or family. It's important to get it out to someone that is listening and caring.
And as a therapist, you're a trained therapist, so you would have to have probably gone through therapy as part of your learning, right?
A lot, yeah.
Okay. And I think a lot of people are more disposed to having to verbalize things. Like, how do you know what you think until you've said it? I think it was maybe Oscar Wilde said that. But I think some people are really, myself included, feel like they really have to sort of speak about something to be able to understand how they think. Yeah. And that's certainly the case for me. And I've had therapy, I've had CBT, what is CBT?
Yeah, CBT.
CBT. And that was good. That was very useful. And then I've had more kind of solution focused therapy. And it's really good that I think some of the stigma is coming away from that, because actually it's a lovely thing to do for yourself. Even if you're not, going crazy, I think it's important for everybody to do it, because you understand so much more about yourself. And it's nice and relaxing. And you get to just this safe space where you can literally say exactly what you're thinking without any judgment. And it's a beautiful thing to do. I would highly recommend it for anybody.
Me too. Me too. Yeah. And interestingly, though, I trained to be a therapist 10 years ago, and there was very little training or attention being paid to anything other than talking. And it's only in the more recent years where I've realized how disconnected I am from my body, that there's so much that goes on somatically that is, if you are just talking and not also noticing where things are happening in your body, you're missing out on a big part of how you communicate with yourself, how you communicate with others. And I guess for you, you are physically doing the act of painting. So I don't know. I'm imagining that there's some real cathartic kind of processes going on there of getting something out onto canvas.
I think there is. I think, and part of the beauty of it is that I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm pretty sure there is something going on there. I mentioned about my first solo show and going into the room and seeing all the paintings together, and I didn't, they asked me at the gallery, what do you want to call the solo show, and what's the theme, what's it about? It's like I'm not sure, but when I see them all up together, I go, maybe this is what it's about, and it makes a bit more sense when it's all together, and it does come out in painting. And I think what you say about the body, they are really connected, and how you paint and your body positioning when you paint informs how the painting will look. So I now stand up and I try and get loose, and I get loose shoulders, and I try and that's how I feel I will paint best. My strokes will come out more expressive, more fluid, whereas if I'm hunched over, sat down, I've got a tiny little brush. I don't use tiny little brushes, I use big brushes. Tiny little brush, and it all becomes tense and tight, and not as good in my opinion. But there's such a connection between the body and the mind. There's a book, I don't know if you've read it, called The Body Keeps the Score.
I haven't actually read it, which makes me a terrible therapist, but I have heard of it, yeah. Okay,
I haven't read it either, but I was talking to a friend about it yesterday, and he's it sounds amazing. So it's, no matter what happens to you in life, your body will process that and reflect it somehow. I'm probably completely butchering it now, but if you are thinking happy thoughts and you are happy, you are less likely to become ill, physically ill. If you are thinking negative thoughts and you are in a job you hate, you can become physically sick from it. There's a lot of stronger correlation between the body and the mind than I think maybe people think or realize. Yeah. I was just going to say sort of the inverse of that. I was talking to my dad, and he told me about a guy who died recently, who was in his 90s. And I couldn't believe that he had made it into that age, because he was quite a heavy drinker, and he was working in a high-stress job all of his life. And, he was off a generation that maybe didn't have the best diet. And he got into his 90s. And what I did realize about him was that actually you know, he always seemed really happy and really like enthused by his job and with the people around him, and he had good relationships, and he was doing something that he loved. So maybe, you know, there's something to be said for that. So a positive mindset of being happy can even ward off the negative effects of what you're putting in your body and how you live your life in terms of a lifestyle. Maybe I'm going too far and I'm talking about something I don't really understand, but it was just an idea that came to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, all of that makes complete sense, and yeah, there's a lot of science that backs up that. I'm wholly against toxic positivity. I'm wholly against anything that means you have to deny how you actually feel about something. But equally, there is real power in looking out for the joys or the you know, perhaps challenging some scripts or mindsets that you have that we've internalized from all sorts of places and people over the years. There's some real power, I think, in working on shifting that, which can sometimes feel like learning a new language, but
yes, and it's really hard to do by yourself. So you need somebody else sitting across from you to speed up that whole process and to challenge you and to go, okay, well, have you thought about it this way? Or just keep asking you questions and allowing you space to come up with the answers yourself. It's, you know, you think, oh, well, I don't have any negative ingrained, you know, traits or habits, but then you quickly, when you speak and maybe get challenged on something, you realize, oh, you totally do, as does everybody.
So let's talk about power, because power is an interesting one. Just in it's a word that has such shadow and light. I think it can be, you know, you have power that can be used for good and power that can be used for evil. What's your relationship with power, just in the sense of like, when do you feel at your most powerful?
When do I feel powerful? I don't know if I do. Maybe it's, I don't know. I'm so insecure about what I do. I'm still coming to terms with it in terms of being an artist, and, you know, all the sort of nice comments that people make don't seem to scratch the surface so much.
Right.
But I think helping younger people makes me feel powerful. Like I've got an influence. Like my nephew, every time I go round, when our family goes round to visit the cousins, my nephew always runs up to me and shows me his latest painting. And this is a lovely little kid who struggles in school, and is, you know, being asked to conform in a certain way. But what he's able to produce on a bit of paper is really interesting and brilliant. And I guess that's power, isn't it? You know, it's being able to help and be an example to somebody, because he watches my TikTok series with his mum. He's not allowed the app himself, but he's allowed to watch his Uncle Mike on TikTok, and, you know, that's pretty powerful. And it's I think it's a really empowering series that I've got on there. You know, you mentioned I've got a decent following now, and I always, just very briefly, what I do is I paint people who comment on my videos, and it's a good way of kind of gaming the algorithm to get more traction. But at the same time, I get unlimited reference photos, because I say, by commenting, you give permission for me to paint you. I don't paint everybody. I have to be selective. I can't paint everybody. Some of my videos have been viewed 12.5 million times, which is insane. But I pick people based on, well, first and foremost, is there a decent reference photo, and is there decent lighting for me to paint them? But secondly, it's about their situation and their personal story. And if, you know, the people that I've painted in the past have all got some kind of story behind them, It could be an eating disorder. It could be a serious illness. It could be living in social unrest or war-torn countries. And they're asking me just to paint them as a simple gesture. Then I'm really drawn to doing that for them. And I feel like that's got some power to it. It's just a small thing. It's just a little gesture. But I really like that part of painting on TikTok. And I did this sort of an extension of the TikTok series as part of my solo show, where we had a TikTok booth so people could go in and take a selfie. And at the end, I would draw out of a hat and paint one of the people that took a selfie in the booth. And the first person out was so-and-so, somebody that I know who had come to visit it. But the second person, because we decided to do a second one, was my nephew. And I was delighted by that. So I can now paint him. And, there's some power in that. And even if it's just a small thing where I've shown him, it's valid to be a painter. It's a valid thing. Then that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's so good to hear. It's such an interesting question to be asked to think about power. When I was thinking about setting up the podcast, it wasn't until someone said to me, well, what's your passion, purpose and power? And I was like, oh God, right. Yeah, I should probably think about that. But power is, we often don't allow ourselves to think about or connect with when we feel powerful, because we often sort of feel like that's a taboo, or it's not kind of okay to feel powerful. And you were kind of connecting it with self-esteem a little bit of, or maybe talent, in the sense of people give me this nice feedback, but I don't really I don't let it resonate yet or sink in yet. How is an interesting.
I think it is. I think it could be a dirty word, because of the narrative. You think about power, and a lot of times your mind leaps to dictators or politicians or heads of industry, and you don't want to necessarily be associated with that. But if we take the power back, it's about what's in us and what we can do, and I think understanding that we do have power and we can set our own path. That's that's an important thing too, which is something I'm coming to realize.
It will be so exciting to see what emerges for you now. You've got the sort of, interestingly, Mikey Freedom, like you've got freedom from some of the constraints that were taking your time and your energy, and it will be really interesting to see what emerges, because you've really, you've got a passion for art, but you've got that purpose of showing your kids that it's important to be authentic and real and genuine and follow your heart and your passion. And then when we talked about power, you then came back to, there's something that's tapping on the door about helping young people and inspiring young people. And then you've had these examples of, I guess, transferring that power. So you've found some people on TikTok that have, I guess, sometimes felt not worthy of art or not worthy of a portrait being done of them, and that's power. There's power everywhere. Yes,
I think so. And I didn't realize a lot of this that we've just talked about until I actually got asked these questions by you, until I vocalized it. So it's all kind of tying in quite nicely. I'm so excited about kind of next steps, and I think I love it when people do something that they love and follow that. And like you speaking to people in a podcast, that's terrific. And me on my artistic, starting out this next chapter of my artistic, I'm not going to use the word journey again, Jesus. And I hate myself. That's so cringe.
Why do people hate the word journey?
I don't know. I think it's because of X Factor, isn't it? Maybe it's I think do you know the comedian Harry Hill?
Yeah
he writes musicals now, and
Was
he pitched a musical, the X Factor, the musical, to Simon Cowell. And he was briefed before he went in to speak to Simon Cowell that you're not allowed to use two words when you speak to Simon Cowell, okay? You're not allowed to use the word journey, and you're not allowed to use the word, what was the other one? It was something like passion or something like that. You're not allowed to use journey or passion. He's sick of hearing those words. So I think when Harry Hill went in, the very first song he pitched as part of the musical was, I've got a passion for my journey, and my journey is my passion. So brilliant. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's hilarious. And I mean, I don't have any strong feelings about the word journey, just because I think I can't think of a better word to sort of describe the process that we're all in, of living, of learning, of growing older, of, trusting ourselves. It is a journey. I mean, what else? What other word?
I know. Yeah, it's kind of, it's one of those words that sort of gets used so much, and then it almost becomes like, yeah, it's like, I think authenticity is probably heading down the same route, unfortunately.
Yeah, I love that word.
I know.
Yeah, they can't take that one.
No, yeah, they're not going to
the people.
Yeah, those people who are having a meeting about hijacking good words.
Yeah, this one's on our list. No one can use that from now on. Congruent. We'll change it to congruent. I don't know. One thing I'm just so intrigued by, just from I don't know where the question's coming from really, but what does it feel like to sell your art? When someone buys a painting, what's that feeling like?
Oh, it's amazing. It is amazing. If people are listening to this and not watching it on YouTube, then once you've finished listening to the podcast, go and watch it on YouTube as well, because you'll be able to see some of my paintings in the background. It's a shameless plug. But selling them is amazing, because painting them, you paint for yourself. You're your first customer, critic. Yeah. And that's how it should be. Don't paint for somebody else. That's a road to ruin. But then to have somebody else not just like it, but also go, do you know what, I'm going to pay some money for that as well. It's the greatest feeling. You probably saw the mad video on TikTok of me running around going, this is sold, this is sold, this is sold. And I had, my expectations were maybe 5 or 6 paintings will sell. The gallery owner was saying, you really need to put your prices up. And I was like, I really don't think anybody's going to be buying it for that price. I think you're mental. But we did put it up, and I ended up selling 21 out of 28 pieces. And it's such an exhilarating feeling. And especially, like, 2 of them weren't even finished. They were still on the easel. I was just passing the gallery and I popped in, and there's a lovely couple there. A couple of ladies who were kind of a bit sad that some of the landscapes weren't available anymore, because I do these massive, big, colourful, expressive landscapes. And I said, well, actually, I've got one on the easel, but it's at my house. And they were like, oh, okay, we'd love to be able to see it. I'm like, okay, do you want to come back to my house? And I drove them. There you go, madam. Open the door. I escort them into the car. So, honestly, I'm not a serial killer. I'm not a serial killer. Come with me. And I drove them up to the house and escorted them in, sat them down. Wait there, madam. I shall go and get the painting, and brought it down. And I mean, she couldn't very well say no then, but she said yes. And it's a mad feeling that somebody endorses what you've done. Not that external validation is the most important thing, but it's nice. It is nice.
Our ego likes it. It's okay.
Yeah. It sure does. Yes. So it's really encouraging that my paintings have sold. I think had I just done the solo show, I set it out as a goal for this year to have a solo show. So I had a near miss previously with somebody who let me down. Even if I hadn't sold anything, I would still chalk it up as a win, just to have that moment of all of my paintings together, hung up on a wall in a nice space with nice lighting and with lots of people around drinking alcohol-free Prosecco and alcohol-free beer. You know, so even without the sales, it'd be good. But
Yeah.
the sales really are the cherry on top. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm so excited for you. I'm so glad you got to have that feeling. I think that probably could be quite a powerful feeling, and I suppose that's where you've got to kind of keep the checks and balances in place, that you're creating art for yourself. I mean, I guess there's a potential that you're going to be commissioned to do stuff, and then that might feel a bit different. Yes. But it I guess probably feels powerful that something in your work has spoken to someone enough that they want to go, that is coming into my home. And yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing. Your commissions, yes, you have to make compromises, and especially I think also now with, because I've always been about painting portraits. Then I switched to landscapes a few months ago, actually, and they've become really like the people seem to really like them, and they're selling. But now potentially the kind of concession, or the thing I may end up, the trap I may fall into, is feeling like I kind of have to do those all the time now because they're selling, because this is my job. Whereas, like, you know, Bob Dylan, he rips it up every album and does something completely different. I've just compared myself to Bob Dylan, and I officially hate myself now. I'm going to cringe again, but you know, there's compromises once you start earning money as well. And how far do you compromise without taking away the essence of what you love and what you're doing and the reason to be doing it in the first place? So that's something I'm probably going to be finding out over the next while. Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll have a part 2 to this podcast where we'll sort of delve into how it actually is on the other side of success. I guess, you know, you're absolutely right. We define success by, you know, all sorts of different ways, and it probably can't be based on external validation solely. But, you know, I'm not making this podcast for no one to listen to. So, you know, we do need that kind of feedback from something to show us that what we're doing, that A, hopefully we're passionate about, B, hopefully we're good at, is also resonating with other people and they like it.
Yeah, it's definitely part of it. And maybe we shouldn't be so ashamed about that.
Yes, I think so. I think that's, it's a part of it, isn't it? And yeah, we've got to make a living. We've got to earn money, pay the bills.
Yeah, absolutely. We do.
Amazing. Well, let's end it there. Although I could ask probably another 20 questions at least. But it's been so good to talk with you and explore these big subjects and hear about your art and your process and these big existential questions.
It's been awesome. Thank you so much, James. I really appreciate it, and thank you for having me on. I just wish you all the success with this, because I've listened to a few of these episodes and they're brilliant. And I'm looking forward to the future ones coming out as well, listening to those.
Thank you. That means a lot. Yeah, thank you again. Thanks for the validation.
Take care. Nice to speak with you.
You too. Take care. Good luck with the future. I will be following your journey and sharing your stuff for sure.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and if you really want to help me out, I would love it if you could leave me a review and share my podcast with friends who you think would also enjoy it. This podcast was produced by Lexi at Digital Hero, and the music was created by Charlie at Walters Music Productions.